He never liked to talk too much about himself. Even when people asked, he often smiled, paused for a few seconds, and said something short, something kind, and then changed the subject. Keanu Reeves never tried to be mysterious, it just came naturally. From the outside, his life looked like a movie itself. Fame, fortune, and roles that became part of pop culture history. But behind that calm face, his story began far away from the red carpets and bright lights. He was born in a place most people wouldn't expect. A city that was loud, crowded, and filled with chaos. His father left when he was still a small boy. His mother worked hard to keep the family together, moving from place to place, trying to give her children a better life. They didn't stay in one country for long. Every few years he had to start over. New home, new school, new people. That constant movement made him quiet, like someone always observing, never fully belonging anywhere. As a child, Keanu wasn't the best student. He struggled with reading, and teachers often misunderstood him. But he wasn't lazy or careless. He just saw the world differently. He liked stories, but not the kind written in textbooks. He liked to imagine them, to act them out, to feel them. He found comfort in creativity, whether it was playing hockey, making jokes, or pretending to be someone else. That spark, though small at first, was the beginning of something special. When his family finally settled in Toronto, life was still far from easy. His mother worked in costume design, and through her, he sometimes met people who worked in theater. Watching actors perform fascinated him. The idea that someone could step into another person's life, even for a few moments, gave him a sense of belonging he'd never felt before. Acting became his way to understand life, a way to find meaning in confusion. In high school, he wasn't the popular kid. He was friendly but often kept to himself. Teachers didn't always see his potential, and he ended up leaving school before graduation. That could have been the end of the story for many people. A quiet young man with no diploma, uncertain about his future. But Keanu had something that didn't show on paper: persistence. He didn't know exactly where he was heading, but he knew he couldn't give up. He started auditioning for small roles, anything that could keep his dream alive. Those early years were tough. There were times when money was short, when jobs didn't come, when doubt tried to creep in, but he stayed humble. He kept moving, kept working, and one day something clicked. His raw, honest presence began to stand out. Directors saw something rare in him, a quiet strength, a gentleness that didn't need words. His first roles were small, but he gave them everything he had. He didn't act for attention. He acted to connect. When he got his first major break in the late 1980s, people began to notice. His face appeared in magazines, his name started to spread, and suddenly, he was one of Hollywood's most promising new stars. But fame didn't change him much. While others chased luxury and headlines, Keanu stayed simple. He preferred motorcycles over limousines and quiet walks over big parties. He wasn't chasing an image. He was just being himself. People liked that. His fans felt that he was real, honest, and human, something that's rare in Hollywood. He would stop to sign autographs for hours, talk kindly to strangers, and treat everyone, from co-stars to camera operators, with the same respect. That down-to-earth nature became one of his most loved qualities. Then came the big moment, the kind of role that would define his career. The film that would turn him from an actor into a global icon. It was a science fiction movie that nobody expected to become a phenomenon, but it did. The world saw him as a hero who questioned reality, who fought against invisible systems, who stood up for truth. The movie made him famous beyond imagination. People shouted his character's name in the streets, posters were everywhere, and he was suddenly one of the most recognizable faces on the planet. But inside, Keanu felt something different. The more successful he became, the quieter he grew. Fame, he realized, couldn't heal the wounds of his past or fill the spaces left by absence. While the world celebrated him, he was still the same person who once struggled to find a place to belong. Success was exciting, but it didn't bring peace. As the years passed, he stayed grounded. He didn't buy mansions or travel with a big entourage. He rode the subway like everyone else. People who spotted him were always surprised to see him sitting quietly, reading, or just looking out the window. He never saw himself as above anyone. That humility wasn't a show. It came from everything he had been through, from every hard beginning that shaped him. When journalists asked him why he didn't live like other stars, He'd smile softly and say that simple things make him happy. Coffee with a friend, a motorcycle ride, a walk at night. Those were his luxuries. He believed that the meaning of life wasn't in money or fame, but in kindness and connection. He once said that grief changes shape but never ends, and that love and loss are two sides of the same coin. Those words came from deep experience, not from philosophy. Before his greatest trials began, Keanu's life seemed calm. His career was steady, and people admired him for his discipline and modesty. But even then, he carried a quiet sadness in his eyes, a reflection of everything he'd already endured. His journey up to that point had been about finding his place in the world, but soon, it would become about surviving it. Every person has moments that test them, that break them down until they have to decide who they really are. For Keanu, those moments would come not through fame or failure, but through pain, the kind that can't be seen from the outside. He didn't know it yet, but life was preparing him for 3 great trials. Before those storms, though, there were peaceful days. He spent time with friends, enjoyed long drives, laughed easily, and seemed to have finally found balance. His kindness wasn't for the cameras. It was real. On film sets, he was known for treating everyone equally, giving away parts of his salary to help the crew, buying lunch for everyone, or just taking time to thank people personally. To him, no one was less important. That attitude made him beloved, but it also set him apart. He didn't play the Hollywood game. He wasn't interested in drama or attention. He just wanted to work, to live quietly, and to stay true to himself. He often said that happiness comes from within, not from what others think of you. He lived that truth every day. Yet life doesn't measure success in comfort. Just when it seemed like everything was falling into place, life would soon show him how fragile everything truly was. The coming years would test his spirit in ways no film ever could, but that part of his journey hadn't started yet. For now, Keanu was simply a man trying to make sense of fame and purpose. He had come a long way from the little boy who moved from country to country, who didn't fit in at school, who dreamed quietly while the world rushed around him. He had found his voice through acting, but he still searched for meaning beyond the stage. What made his story so human wasn't just what he achieved. It was how he carried himself while doing it. He never saw himself as special, even though millions did. He never pretended to have all the answers. He was humble enough to admit that life is a journey, not a destination. And maybe that's what made people connect with him so deeply. In a world where people often wear masks, Keanu remained unmasked, honest, flawed, and kind. He once said that sometimes the simple act of being kind can change someone's entire day. Those words weren't just spoken. He lived them. And so, as his story moved from humble beginnings to rising fame, the heart of who he was remained unchanged. The same quiet boy who once struggled to read became a man who spoke softly, but carried a deep understanding of what it means to live. His life was about to change in ways he couldn't imagine. But one thing was already clear. Keanu Reeves wasn't just surviving the world around him. He was learning from it, one quiet moment at a time. At that time, Keanu's life seemed almost perfect from the outside. His movies were doing well, his name carried respect, and his calm, humble attitude made people love him even more. He walked through fame with quiet dignity, never bragging, never seeking attention. He had the career that millions dream about. But what most people didn't see was that behind his smile, a storm was quietly building. Keanu had always been someone who valued connection over fame. He wasn't interested in showing off his success or surrounding himself with people who only cared about the spotlight. What he wanted most was something simple: peace, family, and love. After years of working hard and living alone, he finally found someone who brought light back into his life. She was kind, creative, and understood him beyond the surface. They shared laughter, long talks, and a dream of starting a family together. For the first time in a long time, Keanu felt like life had finally given him something beautiful that fame could never buy. He was excited to become a father. The thought of holding his child gave him a sense of joy he hadn't felt since his early days in acting. He imagined teaching his little one to ride a bike, sharing stories, and giving the kind of love he wished he'd had growing up. For a man who had lost so much, this was a new beginning, a chance to build the family he never had. But life has a way of testing people when they least expect it. Just as he and his partner were preparing to welcome their baby, tragedy struck. Their daughter was stillborn. The happiness that had filled their hearts turned into unbearable silence. The nursery they had prepared stayed empty, and the joy that once filled their home vanished overnight. For weeks, Keanu couldn't speak about it. He didn't know how to explain that kind of pain. Losing a child changes something deep inside a person. It's not just sadness, it's a kind of emptiness that words can't fill. He tried to stay strong for his partner, but both were broken in different ways. Grief surrounded them, heavy and silent. Months passed, and just as they were trying to find a way to live with the pain, another tragedy came. His partner, still struggling with the heartbreak, was involved in a car accident that took her life. Keanu's world shattered completely. Within a short time, he had lost the two people who meant the most to him. It was as if life had taken everything he had finally dared to love. After that, he disappeared from the public eye for a while. He stopped attending events, stopped giving interviews, and spent most of his time alone. Fame no longer mattered. The applause, the lights, the cameras, none of it could ease the ache inside him. People often saw him walking alone, sitting quietly on a park bench or riding his motorcycle through the city, with a distant look in his eyes. But through all of it, he never spoke bitterly. He didn't blame anyone, didn't lash out at the world. Instead, he carried his pain quietly, like a shadow he had learned to live with. Friends who knew him said that even in his darkest days, he still showed kindness to others. He would hold doors open for strangers, smile at fans, and thank crew members by name. It was as if he found comfort in small acts of goodness. When asked about loss in later interviews, Keanu didn't try to sound wise or dramatic. He simply said that grief never really goes away. It just changes shape. Those words came from experience, from living through something that few people could understand. His pain had made him gentler, not harder. He knew that everyone was fighting a battle, even if it didn't show. During this time, acting became more than a job. It became therapy. It was the only space where he could express emotions he couldn't put into words. He threw himself into work, often spending long hours on set, giving every scene his full heart. Behind every line, every look, there was a piece of his truth. Audiences could feel it, even if they didn't know why. There was something real in his performances, something human that went beyond the script. He also learned how precious and unpredictable life could be. He began to live in the moment, not worrying too much about the future. He stopped chasing happiness and started appreciating peace. He once said that you never know what people are going through, so it's always best to be kind. That became his quiet philosophy. Even in pain, Keanu refused to let bitterness define him. He turned sorrow into compassion. When he saw others struggling, he helped quietly, without cameras or headlines. On movie sets, he made sure the crew was treated well. Sometimes he would take pay cuts so that others could earn more. He would give away parts of his salary to fund the special effects teams, stunt performers, and costume workers who made the movies possible. He didn't talk about it, but people who worked with him always remembered. The tragedy had changed him deeply, but it hadn't broken him. It had stripped away everything unimportant and reminded him what truly mattered: human connection. While most people chased fame, he began chasing meaning. He didn't need luxury to feel alive. He needed honesty, peace, and kindness. He spent more time alone, but it wasn't loneliness, it was reflection. He would ride his motorcycle for hours with no destination, letting the road clear his mind. He'd stop at small cafes, read books, and watch people. There was something comforting about being a quiet observer in a noisy world. Even though life had taken so much from him, Keanu never stopped believing in goodness. He once said that pain doesn't disappear. It becomes part of who you are. And once you accept that, it can teach you how to understand others. That belief guided how he treated people. Years later, when fans saw him smiling at strangers, giving his seat on the subway, or sharing food with crew members, they didn't see a celebrity. They saw a man who had known loss but still chose kindness. That's what made him different. He didn't need to talk about empathy. He lived it every day. During interviews, when asked how he stayed grounded despite everything, he would simply smile and say, "Because life is short, and we're all in this together." There was a quiet wisdom in that answer. He didn't preach, he didn't try to sound deep. He just spoke from a place of truth. After losing so much, he learned to value every small moment. A cup of coffee in the morning, a walk in the rain, a good laugh with a friend. To most people, those things seem ordinary, but to him, they were proof that life still had beauty left in it. He also began to understand that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about learning how to live with what you've lost. There were days when memories would return like waves and he'd feel that old ache in his chest, but he didn't run from it. He accepted it. He once said that pain reminds you that you loved deeply, and that love, even when it hurts, is still worth it. That mindset became his quiet strength. Instead of letting his past define him, he let it teach him. It taught him patience, empathy, and the importance of staying humble no matter how high you climb. He didn't see himself as a movie star. He saw himself as a man trying to do his best one day at a time. Even as the world continued to change around him, Keanu remained the same gentle soul. He walked through life with calm eyes, carrying both joy and sorrow with grace. People who met him often said the same thing, that he made them feel seen, even if only for a moment. That was his gift, not acting, not fame, but presence. And though those dark years had tested him more than anyone could imagine, he came out of them with a softer heart. The trials had taken much, but they had also given him wisdom, the kind that only comes from living through pain and still choosing hope. By the time he returned to the screen, audiences could feel the change. There was a depth in his performances that came from truth, not training. Every expression carried a story. Every silence carried emotion. He wasn't just playing characters anymore. He was living them. He had survived his first great trial, loss so deep it could have destroyed him. But instead, it shaped him into the man people love today, kind, thoughtful, and quietly strong. The world often measures success by fame or money, but Keanu's success was something else entirely. He had learned how to live with heartbreak and still be kind. And though he didn't know it yet, life had more tests ahead. But one thing was certain. Whatever came next, he would face it with the same quiet strength that had carried him this far. After years of heartbreak, Keanu slowly began to find a rhythm again. He wasn't chasing happiness anymore. He was learning to live with sadness in a peaceful way. Life didn't suddenly become easy, but he started to understand that pain doesn't have to control you. It can walk beside you without leading the way. That quiet understanding became his strength. He spent a lot of time alone. Not because he didn't like people, but because solitude helped him heal. He would take long motorcycle rides late at night, with only the sound of the wind and the city lights passing by. On the road, he didn't have to be an actor or a celebrity. He was just a man trying to breathe, trying to keep going. When he wasn't filming, he read books, listened to music, and spent hours thinking about life. He said once that he found peace in simple things. Watching the sunset, sitting quietly, or sharing a meal with someone who didn't expect anything from him. Those little things, the ones most people overlook, became his way of reconnecting with the world. But deep down, he still carried a weight that never left him completely. Some mornings were harder than others. There were days when he felt like disappearing, not because he wanted to give up, but because he wanted to rest from all the noise of life. Yet somehow he always found the will to keep moving. That's what made his spirit different. He never gave up, no matter how tired he felt. When he returned to work, his performances carried something new. He wasn't acting anymore. He was expressing real feelings. Every glance, every pause, every small smile came from a place of truth. People could feel that. They didn't just see an actor. They saw a human being who had been through life's hardest moments and still stood tall. As the years passed, Keanu's humility remained the same. Even after becoming one of the most famous faces in the world, he didn't act like a star. He traveled without assistance, carried his own bags, and spoke politely to everyone. If he saw someone struggling, he would quietly help. There were stories of him giving up his seat on the subway, helping crews move equipment, or sitting beside strangers and listening to their stories without revealing who he was. He believed everyone deserved kindness, no matter who they were. During interviews, journalists often expected big, dramatic answers, but he always spoke simply. When asked about his past, he never complained. He'd smile softly and say, "Life is what it is. Sometimes it's hard, but we keep going." That was his way, never self-pity, never bitterness, just acceptance. But the truth was, even as he learned to live with his pain, he was still searching for meaning. The losses he had faced left questions inside him that no success could answer. What's the point of fame if the people you love aren't there to share it with you? What's the meaning of happiness when it comes and goes like the wind? He began to explore those thoughts not through words, but through action. He started giving more quietly, privately. He donated large amounts of money to hospitals, funded children's wards, and supported cancer research. but he never talked about it publicly. He didn't want praise. He just wanted to make a difference. He once said that helping others gave him peace because it reminded him that he could still bring light into someone else's life. Even when his own heart carried shadows, that quiet generosity became his second nature. He didn't need people to see it. He just needed to do it. Maybe it was his way of balancing the pain he'd endured. With every act of kindness, he created a little bit of good in the world. But while he was finding peace through compassion, another challenge was waiting, not in his personal life this time, but in his own mind. There came a point where the emptiness he carried started to feel heavy again. It wasn't about sadness anymore. It was about purpose. He had survived so much, but what was he surviving for? Fame had stopped exciting him long ago. Awards didn't matter. What he wanted was something real, something that made him feel alive again. He began turning down projects that didn't mean anything to him, and waited patiently for the ones that did. He wasn't chasing money or attention anymore. He was chasing meaning. Then one day a new story came his way. It was about a man who had lost everything, a man driven by love, grief, and vengeance. The script was dark, emotional, and raw, but when Keanu read it, he saw something more. It wasn't just another movie. It was a mirror of his own soul. The character's pain felt real because it was his own. Taking that role wasn't just a career move. It was a form of healing. When the cameras rolled, Keanu poured everything he had into it. The heartbreak, the loneliness, the quiet strength. Every scene carried a piece of his real life. The film became an emotional outlet, and what began as a story on paper turned into a powerful reflection of his resilience. When the movie came out, it surprised everyone. It wasn't just a hit, it became a global phenomenon. People connected to it in a deep way. They saw not only an action hero, but a man fighting his way through grief and finding purpose again. The character became iconic, and so did Keanu. But this time, the fame didn't feel empty. It felt meaningful. For him, the movie was more than success. It was proof that pain can be turned into art, and that even in the darkest stories there can be beauty. It reminded him that sharing his truth, even through fiction, could help others who were silently struggling. As his career revived, so did his spirit. He began to smile more, talk more, and engage with people again. But he never let fame change him. He still lived simply, still rode the subway, still treated everyone with respect. He never forgot where he came from or what life had taught him. Through it all, Keanu began to see life differently. He realized that you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond. He learned that strength isn't about pretending to be fine, it's about being gentle even when the world isn't. He started to see every day as a gift, not something guaranteed. He often said that the people who smile the most are sometimes the ones who've been through the most. That belief shaped how he saw others. He didn't judge anyone because he understood that everyone was fighting something unseen. Maybe that's why people felt so drawn to him, because he made them feel safe, understood, and valued. There was something peaceful about the way he lived. He didn't need the world to notice him to feel fulfilled. He didn't crave recognition or fame. His joy came from simple acts, listening to someone, sharing a laugh, helping quietly. That was his way of saying, I understand. Life is hard, but we can still be kind. And yet, even with all this wisdom, he never saw himself as special. When fans called him an inspiration, he would often shake his head and say, I'm just doing my best like everyone else. That humility made his story even more powerful. It reminded people that strength doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it's found in quiet acceptance. As time went on, he began to reflect more deeply on what his struggles had taught him. He understood now that loss doesn't have to destroy love, it can deepen it. The people he had lost were still part of him, guiding him in silence. Their memory lived in his kindness, in the way he treated others, in the patience he showed to strangers. Keanu once said that the simple act of being alive is already a miracle. Coming from him, those words carried real weight. He had faced enough pain to give them meaning. To him, survival wasn't just about breathing, it was about learning, giving, and forgiving. Every time he walked onto a film set, he carried his past with grace. Every time he smiled at a fan, he reminded them that even those who look calm might be carrying invisible pain. And every time he gave quietly to someone in need, he proved that the best kind of heroism doesn't need a camera. He had survived his second great trial, the battle within. And though his soul still carried scars, he had learned how to live with them beautifully. Life had broken him open, but through those cracks the light had started to shine again. And even though he didn't know it yet, his journey wasn't over. There was one more trial waiting, a final lesson about what truly gives life meaning. But this time he was ready. He had already walked through fire and found peace on the other side. What came next would not be about loss or pain. It would be about rebirth. About discovering that even after everything, love, kindness, and purpose can still grow. There was a quiet strength in the way Keanu moved through life after all that had happened. He no longer needed noise, crowds, or attention. He lived with calm purpose, finding meaning in things that once seemed small. Every sunrise, every kind gesture, every good conversation felt like a gift. He had learned how to slow down and breathe again. His pain hadn't vanished, it never does, but it had changed shape. It had softened, becoming part of who he was. Instead of trying to push it away, he carried it gently, like a reminder of love that once existed. He began to understand that some experiences don't end. They live inside you and guide you in quiet ways. By this time, the world saw him as an icon. His movies were successful, his name was respected, and yet he lived as simply as ever. He didn't surround himself with luxury or crowds of admirers. He preferred a small group of friends, quiet nights, and moments of stillness. He didn't need the world's approval. He had found peace within himself. One of the things that made him so different was his honesty. He never pretended to be perfect. He didn't hide behind fame. He admitted that life was still hard sometimes, that he still missed people he had lost, and that healing wasn't a straight path. When he spoke, people listened, not because he was famous, but because his words came from truth. He often said that we all carry something painful, and that kindness is the one thing that makes it bearable. That became his way of living. He made sure everyone who worked with him felt seen. On movie sets, he'd greet every crew member by name, thank them personally, and often share his lunch with them. When filming wrapped, he would give generous gifts to the team, not to show off, but because he knew how hard they worked. People who met him always said the same thing. He made them feel valued. Whether it was a fan on the street or a stranger on a plane, Keanu treated everyone equally. He listened, smiled, and gave his full attention. In a world that often forgets how to slow down, he was fully present. But what most people didn't know was that this kindness came from a very personal place. He knew what it felt like to be unseen, to struggle quietly, to lose hope. And because of that, he made it his mission to never let others feel the same. Helping people gave him purpose. It turned his pain into something meaningful. He began supporting causes close to his heart. He quietly donated to hospitals and cancer foundations. He funded research programs without attaching his name to them. For him, giving wasn't about being noticed. It was about balance. He believed that when life gives you more than you need, you should build a longer table, not a taller wall. During interviews, when asked why he gave so much away, he would smile and say, "Because money means nothing if it can't help someone." He truly believed that kindness was the only wealth worth keeping. There was another side to his healing too, the creative one. Acting had always been a way for him to express what he couldn't say out loud. But now it became something deeper. He began choosing roles that reflected the lessons life had taught him, characters who were broken but still fought for light. Every time he stepped into a role, it was like a small piece of therapy, another chance to tell the truth about being human. When the world saw him again in those roles, they noticed something different. His performances carried a weight, a depth that couldn't be taught in acting school. It came from experience, from living through heartbreak, loss, and rebirth. Every tear, every silence, every smile on screen came from something real inside him. That honesty touched people. Audiences didn't just watch his films, they felt them. They connected to his characters because they saw their own pain, their own hope reflected back. In a world full of fast fame and fake smiles, Keanu's authenticity stood out like a light in the dark. As his movies found success again, so did his spirit. But even with the return of fame, he remained the same quiet soul. He didn't let the noise of the industry pull him away from what mattered. He often said that fame can disappear overnight, but character stays forever. His days were simple. He would wake early, read, ride his motorcycle, and spend hours practicing for his roles. He trained with discipline and patience, not to impress anyone, but because he respected his craft. He believed that giving your best even when no one's watching is what defines integrity. He was known for doing his own stunts, sometimes pushing himself to the limit. But he never bragged about it. When people praised him, he'd just laugh and say, "I'm lucky to be here doing what I love." That humility made him even more loved by fans around the world. Outside of film, he began exploring new creative paths. He wrote poetry, co-founded a small publishing company, and even got involved in motorcycle design. These weren't business moves, they were passions. He liked building things, creating beauty in simple forms. Whether it was a book, a bike, or a movie, he wanted everything he made to mean something. His philosophy on life became clear: do good work, stay kind, and keep moving forward. He didn't waste time on hate, envy, or regret. When asked how he managed to stay positive after everything he'd been through, he said, "I try to be grateful. Every day I'm alive, I get another chance." That perspective changed how he saw success. It wasn't about awards or money anymore. It was about peace of mind. He found joy in moments most people would overlook: a shared laugh, a quiet dinner, a simple thank you. He often said that happiness comes and goes, but peace is something you can build every day. He started meeting people who saw the world the same way he did, people who cared more about kindness than fame. He built a small circle of trust around him, people who reminded him of what really mattered. They didn't talk about movies or money. They talked about life, purpose, and gratitude. Even as he grew older, he didn't lose his curiosity about the world. He still asked questions, still listened to others' stories, still looked for beauty in unexpected places. He often said that the best way to understand life is to stay humble enough to keep learning. There were still days when he missed the people he had lost. Sometimes during interviews, when someone mentioned his past, his eyes would soften and go quiet for a moment. He didn't need to say anything, his silence said it all. But instead of letting grief weigh him down, he used it as fuel to keep being better, kinder, more grateful. His third trial wasn't about loss or loneliness this time. It was about rediscovery. It was about finding joy again after years of pain. It was about realizing that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing love despite the hurt. Through all of this, Keanu became a symbol of calm strength, not because he was invincible, but because he was real. He showed the world that you can go through the worst and still choose to be gentle. You can lose everything and still find reasons to smile. People admired him not just for his movies, but for the way he carried himself. He proved that you don't need to be loud to make a difference. Sometimes the quietest person in the room has the most powerful story to tell. And as his career continued to grow, his influence went beyond cinema. He became a reminder that kindness never goes out of style, that compassion is stronger than fame, and that success means nothing without peace in your heart. Whenever he was asked what he'd learned from everything he'd been through, he always answered the same way: to appreciate life, to be kind, to keep going. Those simple words carried the weight of a lifetime of lessons. In the end, Keanu had turned his pain into purpose. Every scar had become a story. Every loss had become a lesson. He had faced life's hardest challenges, but instead of becoming bitter, he became better. He didn't just survive, he learned how to live, and that was his quiet victory. By the time Keanu reached this point in his life, he had been through more than most people could imagine. He had faced loss, grief, and deep loneliness. He had survived personal tragedies that could have broken anyone. And yet, he was still here, standing quietly, walking through life with a gentle strength that few noticed but many felt. He often thought about the lessons he had learned along the way. Life, he realized, is not fair. It doesn't follow rules, and it doesn't pause for anyone. The pain you face might seem unbearable, and sometimes it comes all at once. But the thing that matters is how you respond, how you carry yourself when the world feels heavy, how you choose to treat others even when your own heart is breaking. Keanu understood now that surviving trials isn't about never feeling pain. It's about accepting it. It's about learning to live with it and letting it guide you rather than control you. He had lost people he loved, moments he cherished, and opportunities that could never come back. Yet he didn't let those losses make him bitter. Instead, he allowed them to teach him. One of the biggest lessons he learned was the power of kindness. He realized that in life everyone is fighting battles that aren't visible. Sometimes the smallest gesture can change someone's day, or even their life. Holding the door open, giving a compliment, listening without judgment, these small acts mattered more than fame, money, or recognition. He also learned the importance of patience. Life rarely unfolds the way you expect. Dreams can be delayed, people can leave, and pain can linger. But rushing through it doesn't make it better. Keanu found that taking time to understand life, to observe, and to be present brought clarity and peace. That patience allowed him to make decisions from a place of thoughtfulness rather than fear. Another lesson was about resilience. Surviving the trials he had faced wasn't about being strong all the time. It was about moving forward even when strength felt impossible. There were days he wanted to hide, to give up, to let the world take over. But he learned to take small steps, one day at a time, one breath at a time. Resilience, he discovered, was quiet, not loud. It was in choosing to wake up and live even when it hurt. He also learned about gratitude. After losing so much, he realized that even the smallest joys are worth noticing. A warm cup of coffee, a walk in the sun, a laugh with a friend, these simple moments were treasures. Life's beauty isn't always in big accomplishments or grand gestures. Often it is hidden in the ordinary, in the moments that pass quietly but leave an imprint on your heart. Keanu's experiences also taught him about love in its purest form. Love isn't about possession or control. It's about connection, care, and empathy. The people he lost remained a part of him, not because he clung to them, but because he carried their memory with respect and warmth. Their absence shaped his heart, but it didn't close it. It made him more capable of giving love and understanding to others. He discovered that humility is a kind of strength. Many people would have let their fame or success define them. Many would have used tragedy as an excuse to be bitter or selfish. But Keanu chose to remain grounded. He treated everyone equally, no matter their position, no matter their fame. He understood that life is fleeting, and the way you treat others is what lasts. Through his work, he also learned the importance of purpose. Acting had always been a part of him, but after the trials, it became more than a career. It became a way to communicate truth. He found roles that resonated with his own experiences, characters who faced adversity and found strength. Through these stories, he could reach people in a way that words alone never could. Purpose, he realized, gives meaning to pain. It turns suffering into action. Keanu also learned that vulnerability is not weakness. He didn't hide his emotions even when they were painful. He showed that it's okay to feel deeply, to grieve, and to express sorrow. That vulnerability, paired with resilience and kindness, became his unique strength. People responded to that honesty because it reflected their own hidden struggles. He often reflected on the importance of presence. Life is fleeting and time passes quickly. He had learned to appreciate moments fully, to listen, to watch, to be there completely. That presence made relationships richer, experiences more meaningful, and even ordinary days feel extraordinary. One of the most profound lessons he learned was forgiveness. Not just forgiving others, but forgiving himself. Life had handed him situations beyond his control, and he had to come to terms with his own feelings of guilt, regret, and what-ifs. He realized that holding on to anger or self-blame only prolongs suffering. By forgiving, he freed himself and allowed space for peace to grow. Keanu also learned that happiness is not a permanent state. It's a series of moments, sometimes small, sometimes fleeting. Expecting life to always feel good leads to disappointment. Instead, he learned to cherish joy when it came and endure sorrow with patience. That understanding made him calmer, steadier, and more compassionate toward himself and others. Through all three trials, loss, internal struggle, and rediscovery, he saw life as a teacher. Pain is not the enemy. It is a guide. Every challenge brought a lesson. Every setback brought perspective, and every moment of despair became an opportunity to grow. He realized that survival isn't about avoiding hardships, but about learning from them and allowing them to shape you into someone stronger, wiser, and more caring. He also discovered that love extends beyond romantic relationships. Friendship, connection with coworkers, and random acts of kindness became expressions of love he valued deeply. He invested in people without expecting anything in return. Those bonds gave him strength and reminded him that life is not about what you get, but what you give. Keanu often said that people remember how you make them feel more than what you say or do. That became his guiding principle. He tried to leave every interaction better than he found it. He treated people with dignity, empathy, and patience, understanding that kindness costs nothing but can mean everything. Another realization was about humility in the face of fame. He saw how quickly success could vanish, and how little it mattered compared to personal integrity and character. No award, No role, no applause could replace genuine human connection. That awareness grounded him, keeping him centered despite the pressures of Hollywood. He also learned that grief is not a straight path. It comes in waves, sometimes years after the initial loss. And that's okay. He accepted that healing doesn't mean forgetting, and that living fully includes making space for sorrow. By embracing grief instead of fighting it, he found freedom and authenticity. As he reflected on his life, Keanu realized that resilience, kindness, humility, and presence were not traits you are born with. They are cultivated through experience. They are shaped by hardship, loss, and conscious choices. Life doesn't give these gifts lightly, but once earned, they become a part of who you are. He understood that life is fragile. People you love can be gone in an instant. Opportunities may slip away. Pain can strike without warning. That awareness didn't make him fearful. It made him intentional. Every action, every word, every gesture mattered. Life was not to be wasted on bitterness or resentment, but to be lived fully with compassion and purpose. Keanu also learned the quiet power of humility. Even when the world called him a hero, an icon, or a legend, he remained grounded. He didn't let praise inflate him, nor did he let criticism diminish him. He focused on doing what was right, treating others well, and living honestly. That humility made his life richer and his story more meaningful. He came to understand that suffering and joy are intertwined. The deepest joy is often born from the deepest pain. Losing people he loved, facing grief, and confronting his own struggles allowed him to experience moments of profound connection, compassion, and peace. Without the trials, he might have never seen the depth of life's beauty. Through it all, Keanu realized that life's meaning is not found in material wealth, fame, or recognition. It is found in connection, integrity, kindness, and presence. It is in how you respond to adversity, how you treat others, and how you choose to live each day. That understanding shaped every choice he made thereafter. Looking back, he saw that the 3 trials he survived, loss, inner battle, and rediscovery, were not punishments. They were lessons. They shaped him into the man he became. They taught him that life is fragile, love is powerful, and kindness is eternal. He realized that his story, though filled with pain, could inspire others not because it was extraordinary, but because it was real. People could see themselves in his struggles and be reminded that they too could endure, heal, and find meaning. His journey became a quiet beacon, showing that life is hard but worth living. And in the end, Keanu understood the most important lesson of all, that life is not about what you gain or lose, but about how you show up in the moments you are given. Every act of love, every kind gesture, every decision made with integrity contributes to the story you leave behind. That story, he realized, is the true measure of a life well lived. He survived not by avoiding pain, not by running from loss, but by living fully, embracing life with humility, and choosing kindness even when it was hard. He carried sorrow and joy together, letting each shape him without defining him. That balance, that quiet wisdom became his gift to the world. Keanu Reeves's life shows that even in the darkest trials, there is light to be found. He demonstrates that resilience, compassion, and humility are the strongest forms of courage. And he reminds us that survival is not just about continuing, it's about learning, growing, and living in a way that leaves the world better than you found it. In the end, the trials he faced became lessons for everyone who followed his story. Loss taught him empathy. Inner struggle taught him patience and strength. Rediscovery taught him purpose and love. And together, these lessons painted the picture of a man who not only survived life's hardest moments, but learned to live them fully and gracefully. Keanu's story is not just about fame or movies. It is about being human. It is about facing pain, embracing it, and transforming it into something meaningful. It is a reminder that life will challenge everyone, but those challenges do not define you. Your choices, your kindness, and your courage do, and that above all else is what Keanu learned about life.